Hey everybody. Today we're going to talk about groups and organizations. It's not a very large chapter. It's kind of like the last one. It's shorter. There's not like a ton to it that I'm going to go over. But the first thing when it comes to groups and organization, what is a social group? A group is two or more people. You don't need more. You don't have to have more than two people to have a group. Some people would say, well, two people isn't a group. That's a pair. It's a group. So all you need is two people to have a group. But a social group is two people or more who interact frequently and have some kind of relationship, whether it be something that's more personal or something that's more business like, less personal. We have primary and we have secondary groups. With primary groups, they're much smaller groups. They're very personal, and they have long-lasting bonds. There's usually some kind of emotional bond there. So, like a primary group would be your family, be your friends. Those would be examples of what primary groups would be. Whereas you have secondary group, and these are much less personal. They're more business-like. They're much larger. There's not an emotional tie. Instead of being more emotionally driven, secondary groups are actually more goal driven. So, like a group of coworkers or like a group of athletes, those would be secondary groups. Athletes are an interesting one because you could argue either way that they're a primary group. No, they're a secondary group. I always argue that on the court, athletes are definitely secondary groups because they're always trying to reach some type of goal. But off the court, they might be more of a primary group. Let's see here. When it comes to groups, there's always, hopefully, going to be some type of leadership. You have instrumental and expressive leadership. Instrumental leadership is goal oriented. So you're more likely to see instrumental leadership in a secondary group. Whereas expressive leadership is where it's more emotional. You provide emotional support for your members, so that's more likely to be primary. There are different styles of leadership. You have authoritarian, democratic, and laissez-faire. And authoritarian is where one person makes all the major decisions and assigns the tasks. They don't rely on help from other people. They make all the decisions themselves, and what they say goes. Whereas democratic is the opposite. The leader wants people's opinion. They want their input. They want them to help make the decisions. So it's the complete opposite of authoritarian. Then you have laissez-faire, and it's kind of democratic. It's kind of similar to democratic leadership, except in democratic, you take an active role. You're actively leading. Even if you're having others express their opinions and helping make decisions, you're still very active. You're still leading. Whereas in laissez-faire, that's very minimal as far as decision making. You just let other people make the decisions. You're very laid back. You don't really just go with the flow. You don't really care. So that's something that's interesting. A term I want to go over real quick is conformity. And with conformity, it's where we change our behavior to fit in with other people. So when people talk about peer pressure, that's conformity. There's a specific study that was done years ago. It was done by Solomon Asch, and it's called the Line Experiment. Look it up on YouTube. Just type in Asch Line Experiment. It'd be ASCH, I think. Yeah, ASCH. But basically, they had three on one side. They had one line on this side of the chart, and on the other side they had three different ones, A, B, and C. And basically you had to pick which one A, B, or C was the same length as the one over here that was by itself. And in the experiment, they had I think the original was like 6 people. One person was didn't know what was going on. The other ones were in on the experiment. Oh, because at first, people were given the correct answers. They would pick the obviously right one. Well, then after a few rounds, everybody except that one person would say the same wrong answer. And they wanted to see if the one person who wasn't in on it, if they would conform to what the others said, even if it's obviously wrong. Because they didn't, to see if they would change their answer because they didn't want to stand out or because of the group influence, that peer pressure. So, what they found was that maybe about a third of the time people change their answers. So, it's not always a guarantee that people will conform or people will cave into pressure, but it is something that that does happen. Something that we all definitely either probably have experienced or maybe something that we've seen personally. Oh, one other term I want to mention is what we call I can never say this word. McDonaldization. And that's where these dimensions of these principles of McDonald's have come to, take over all of society, or affect all of society, I should say. But their efficiency, predictability, quantity over quality, and also control through non-human technologies. This term was invented, it was authored in the early 90s, so it's been around a little while. But it says these 4 principles have come to take over the world. And if you think about it, it's kind of true. And you can actually, there's a little YouTube video that's a few minutes long. If you talk about McDonaldization, it's actually it's actually kind of like a cartoon. So, if you look that up, that'll give you specific examples too. But, if you think about these things, efficiency is something that people want, not just with fast food, with everything. If you think about our phones or internet connections, anytime they get the least little bit slow, we get frustrated. And I have to remind myself, what? It could be dial-up internet. I don't even know if many of you guys even know what dial-up internet is, but it was terrible if you haven't ever experienced it. So I have to remind myself, what? Things aren't always going to be efficient, like all the time. But with that said, it's just an expectation that everybody has come to want, and from other people, from anybody and everything. So, predictability. We like things to be in a certain way. We like things to be consistent. So, whenever we have predictability, we have consistency, we get really comfortable. We like that. We don't have it. I'm one of those people. I like consistency. I like predictability. I like things to be just so. So whenever it's not, I don't really deal with it all that greatly. So, that's another one. Quantity over quality. This definitely applies to food. You think about the portion sizes, from our portion sizes, if we were to compare them to Europe's, they're a lot different. They are, ours are like twice the size of what they give in Europe. So like our medium is like twice as, really any size. But like our large compared to their large, our large, what they would consider their, tongue tied. If you were to go to Europe and look at their size large, it would be more like our medium sized. So that tells you something right there, just how quantity, desire of more has played a huge part, especially in this society in the U.S. And then non-human technologies, that's something that we've seen a lot of, that we see these different types of technology kind of take human jobs away. I know one thing specifically, in some Walmarts, instead of having managers go around and scan products and scan things, they're actually using robots that go down the aisles and scan the tags instead of the managers doing it. So like, I'm always wonder, are robots or technology, is it going to completely take over the world at some point? In a way, I feel like it has, in that it's so entrenched in everything that we do. But, I always wonder, these movies you see where technology literally just takes over and, rules over us. That's kind of something that's always interested me. But, anyways, that's all for this chapter. I will see you guys later.